Good evening, dear listener. As you settle into your cozy space, perhaps adjusting your blanket, taking a slow sip of tea, or resting your head gently on your pillow, allow yourself to breathe deeply. Let the outside world fade away for just a moment, replaced by a quiet, inviting silence. Tonight, I invite you to relax and prepare for a journey, one that whispers softly at the edge of your consciousness. Imagine for a moment a world where the weight of your worries isn't measured in dollars or cents, but in shadows cast by towering walls and ancient scrolls. Today's story is a gentle voyage through time, where the familiar discomfort of a long queue or the endless ping of notifications is replaced by something far older, something almost mythical. Picture a scene where the air is thick with whispers of history swirling like fog through a quiet village, where the faint echoes of rusted toll booths and silent markets still linger. It's a place where taxes aren't just numbers on a page, but burdens carried in bones and breath. And somewhere in this strange, distant landscape, your role awaits, more curious, more mysterious than anything you've known before. As your eyes grow heavy and the night deepens, soon you'll awaken, not in your bed, but in a world where the shadows stretch longer and the stories are woven from the threads of time itself. A place where history and imagination dance softly, inviting you to explore secrets hidden beneath layers of silence and wonder. Your bed is a rough wooden cot, the mattress nothing more than a heap of straw and coarse wool, pressing uncomfortably against your back. The air in this room is thick with the scent of burning herbs, mingled with the faint metallic tang of blood and iron from the nearby forge. As you sit up, you notice the rough, itchy fabric of your clothing, woolen tunic and coarse linen trousers that scratch against your skin as if trying to remind you of how different comfort is from modern softness. The light is faint, slipping through a small, uneven window, casting a patchwork of shadows across the stone walls. Outside, the village awakens with a chorus of sounds, clattering hooves, distant shouts, the clang of metal on metal from the smithy. Somewhere nearby, a bell rings, perhaps signaling the start of market day or a call to prayer, its deep toll reverberating through the cool morning air. You can hear the muffled groans of the sick, the hurried footsteps of merchants setting up their stalls, children's laughter and shouts echoing as they dart through the narrow streets. Beside you, a cracked clay jug releases a faint waft of vinegar and stale water, a reminder that even the simplest pleasures, like a cool drink, are often a challenge here. You reach out and grasp a rough, carved wooden cup, feeling its coarse surface against your palm. The taste of the water is flat and slightly bitter, yet somehow refreshing amid this gritty, bustling scene. And then there's the smell, fumes of burnt wood and herbs, mixed with the earthy aroma of damp stone and the faint, persistent hint of sweat. How different from the sterile, sanitized air of your modern life. Here, every breath feels like a small adventure, a reminder of how far removed you are from the conveniences of today's world. The moment hits you with a strange, almost comical realization. Your idea of a bad morning used to be forgetting your phone charger or spilling coffee on your shirt. Here, it's realizing your mask, your cloth covering, smells worse than the patients you're supposed to assist. You chuckle softly, despite the discomfort, as you pull on your rough tunic and lace up your worn leather shoes, feeling the coarse fibers scratch against your skin. Now, with a slow, mindful movement, you stand up and brush yourself off. Your fingers trace the rough wood of a nearby table, cluttered with scrolls, small bottles, and a faded feather quill. You reach for your cloak, thick wool, heavy with dirt and the dust of many days, and throw it over your shoulders, the fabric stiff and unyielding. As you tighten the clasp, you step toward the door, your bare feet feeling the uneven cold stone beneath. Outside, the village unfolds in all its lively, gritty chaos. Narrow lanes wind through clusters of small houses, their timber frames leaning at odd angles, thatched roofs sagging under the weight of years. People move briskly, peasants carrying baskets of vegetables, farmers leading livestock, women gossiping beneath their hoods, children darting past with dirt-smudged faces. Some villagers cast quick glances your way, eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity, respect, and perhaps a touch of apprehension. Your presence, marked by the strange mask or cloak you wear, commands a silent acknowledgement, an unspoken recognition of your role in this complex tapestry of daily life. In the town square, a group of merchants haggle loudly over the price of cloth, their voices rising and falling like waves crashing against the shore. A soldier in battered armor stands by, eyeing passers-by with a stern gaze. An old woman sits outside her door, peeling vegetables with slow, deliberate movements, her voice murmuring prayers to the air. Somewhere, a blacksmith's hammer strikes repeatedly, sparks flying as metal is shaped into something new. An ordinary act that in this place feels almost ritualistic. As you observe, you notice the subtle way everyone reacts to your presence. Some nod respectfully, others avert their gaze, perhaps wary of what you represent. You feel the weight of their gaze, a quiet acknowledgement of your importance in this intricate social fabric. Their world revolves around routines, customs, and burdens, each one carrying a story of taxes, tolls, and obligations that stretch back generations. And as you stand there, taking in this vivid scene, it becomes clear this is no ordinary place, and you are no ordinary visitor. To truly understand where you've just woken up, you need to step back and see the bigger picture, the grander world that has shaped this life, this village, this moment in time. Because beneath the surface of this bustling, gritty town lies a story rooted in centuries of duty, control, and the relentless flow of resources, stories woven into the very fabric of the land and its people. The era you've woken up in is roughly the late Middle Ages, perhaps around the 14th or early 15th century, a period marked by the shadows of grand kingdoms and the echoes of ancient traditions. This was a time when monarchs ruled with an iron grip, their crowns shining brightly atop thrones that seemed to be built from the very bones of history, while the land around them was a patchwork of sprawling kingdoms, city-states, and tiny villages clinging to survival. The air is thick with the scent of history, smoke from blacksmiths' forges, the aroma of freshly baked bread wafting from humble bakeries, and the faint, lingering smell of chamber pots emptied into the streets. In this world, society is a layered cake, though one where the slices are not equally tasty. At the very top sit the nobles, clad in velvet and ermine, living in castles that seem to scrape the clouds, their lives a constant game of politics and privilege. Just below them are the clergy, monks, priests, and bishops, whose influence is as tangible as the stone beneath your feet, guiding both spiritual and worldly affairs with a mixture of faith and fear. Beneath these layers are the merchants, bustling and noisy, their carts overflowing with spices, fabrics, and rumors, the artisans crafting everything from armor to illuminated manuscripts. And at the bottom, the majority, peasants and serfs tied to the land, their days a relentless cycle of toil, their lives dictated by seasons, taxes, and the whims of their lords. This stratified world is a stark contrast of riches and scarcity. The rich, who live in the castles or grand monasteries, enjoy luxuries that seem almost fantastical, perfumed oils, silk garments, and a variety of foods that modern palates might envy, while the poor struggle to scrape enough together for a crust of bread, often forced to barter or work just to survive another day. It's a society where your family's wealth, or lack thereof, can mean the difference between life and death, and where luck often determines whether you're a noble's favoured servant or a starving wanderer. Power is concentrated in the hands of a few, kings, queens, and church leaders, whose decrees ripple across the land, shaping everything from laws to prayers. Obedience is expected, rebellion punished swiftly, and the concept of individual rights is still a whisper in the wind. Beyond the social fabric, the physical landscape is a patchwork of city walls, muddy streets, and sprawling fields. Picture a marketplace more chaotic than Black Friday, but with more pigs than people, where merchants shout over each other, hawking everything from livestock to potions. Streets are often muddy and rutted, lined with timber-framed houses leaning against each other for support, their thatched roofs sagging under the weight of rain and time. Churches tower above, their bell towers ringing out across the land, calling the faithful to prayers that seem to echo endlessly through the stone corridors. Roads are often muddy, winding through forests and hills, leading to distant towns or battlegrounds, some of which are the sites of ongoing conflicts, invasions, or the ever-present threat of bandits lurking in the shadows. The rhythm of life here is both relentless and surprisingly predictable. Dawn breaks with the crowing of roosters or the tolling of church bells, signaling the start of a day filled with hard labor. Farmers plow fields, peasants mend fences, and artisans hammer away at their craft, all under the watchful eye of the sun and the ever-present reminder of the seasons. Religious festivals punctuate the calendar, feasts, processions, and saints' days, offering brief respite from the daily grind. But taking a bath? Well, that was almost suspicious, like announcing to everyone that you were planning something shady. Cleanliness was often a matter of practicality rather than preference. A full bath was a rare luxury, and many believed that washing too often could invite illness or bad luck. Instead, people would wash their hands or faces quickly, then cover themselves in fragrant oils or powders, hoping to mask the dust and dirt of their toil. Your modern frustrations, Wi-Fi outages, traffic jams, or slow-loading apps, are nothing compared to trying to light a damp fire in the rain or carry a bucket of water up a steep ladder. Forget gyms. Carrying water from the well to your home was a full-body workout, and doing it every day was just part of life's routine. Here, every effort, every task, is a small test of endurance, a reminder that comfort is a distant dream for most. Every day, you are reminded that technology and convenience are luxuries few can afford, yet somehow life persists, stubborn and resilient, in the face of hardship. Politically and culturally, this is a world of kingdoms and empires, where kings and queens rule by divine right, their authority often backed by armies and the church. Power is maintained through a complex web of alliances, marriages, and battles, wars that can last for years, leaving behind scars in the form of ruined towns or displaced populations. Invasions are common, whether from rival kingdoms or marauding tribes, and the threat of plague or famine always lurks in the background, ready to wipe out entire villages with a single breath. The Church holds sway over the collective mind, blending faith with superstition, believing that saints can intercede with divine powers, or that a curse might befall those who displease the heavens. Superstitions are woven into daily life. Some believed carrying a handful of onions in your pocket could ward off the plague, while others swore that sniffing flowers soaked in vinegar kept the devil at bay. Masks, but make it medieval, cloth coverings that hide your face, not from a virus, but from the suspicion and fear that pervade every corner of society. Now, as you stand amidst this ancient world, it's easy to see how different, and yet how strangely similar life was. Power, fear, faith, and routine intertwined, shaping each day with a mixture of necessity and superstition. But don't worry, soon we'll narrow our view, zooming in on what life was really like behind closed doors, what people ate, how they bathed, and the odd little rituals that made their daily existence uniquely medieval. Because understanding the grander picture is just the first step before we uncover the intimate details of a life governed by taxes, tolls, and debts that could leave a person forever bound, whether to a ledger or a lord. You awaken to the gentle creak of wooden beams overhead, the coolness of the early morning seeping through the crack in the window. Your first instinct is to stretch, aching muscles protesting from yesterday's labor, arms reaching out in a slow, deliberate arc, feeling the roughness of your coarse blanket against your skin. The air is thick with the smell of damp wool, and the faint, smoky scent of the hearth still burning in the corner, casting flickering shadows across the darkened room. As you sit up, your bare feet find the uneven, cold stone floor, which feels like a patchwork quilt of rough patches and smooth stones, each one a tiny reminder of the work ahead. Your hand gropes for the basin, a simple wooden bowl filled with cold water, the only luxury for washing your face before the day begins. You dip your hands into the water, the chill biting your skin, and splash it onto your cheeks, feeling the shock of cold wake up your senses. There's no soap, just water, plain and unadorned, because in this time, cleanliness is less about hygiene and more about survival. You might rub a rough cloth across your face or dab at your neck with a piece of coarse linen, hoping to clear away the sleep and the dirt accumulated from yesterday's toil. The idea of a long, relaxing shower? That's a distant dream. Here, survival is splashing some water on your face and hoping the smell of sweat and smoke doesn't scare the neighbors away. In this era, personal hygiene is a matter of practicality mixed with superstition. The local belief is that frequent baths could weaken your body or invite illness. So instead, people rely on fragrant herbs and strong-smelling oils to mask odors. You might have a small jar of vinegar, not for cooking, but as a quick deodorizer, or bundles of dried herbs, lavender, rosemary, or sage, that are burned in the corner to purify the air and keep away pestilence. You might even sprinkle a bit of perfume, though it's often just a mixture of crushed flowers and spices, trying to fend off the musty smell of damp wool and smoky fireplaces. Forget your fancy skincare routines with 20 products and 20 steps. Here, it's a splash of water, a dab of herbs, and a prayer that the smell doesn't offend the noses of your family or neighbors. Your home is a simple affair. Walls made of dark, rough-hewn timber, or wattle and daub, with a faint aroma of burnt wood lingering in the air. The fireplace dominates the room, its stones blackened from years of use, a source of heat, light, and the occasional smoky aroma that clings to every surface. The furniture is sparse, a rough-hewn table, a few benches, perhaps a stool or two, each piece showing signs of wear, with splinters and dents telling stories of countless meals, conversations, and quiet moments by the fire. Utensils are simple clay pots, wooden spoons, and leather pouches hanging from hooks. The walls are dark with soot, and the floors creak beneath your feet, every step a reminder of how much life can be crammed into such humble surroundings. Rags and cloths are hung to dry or to serve as makeshift curtains. The scent of wood smoke mixes with the faint smell of damp linen and the lingering aroma of meals cooked hours ago. Speaking of meals, your first food of the day is likely something humble, a piece of coarse bread, hard as a rock, possibly dipped in a thin, sour broth, or a sliver of aged cheese, its flavor sharp and tangy, like biting into a memory. It's a simple, filling meal, nothing fancy, No avocado toast here, more like chewing on a piece of history. Perhaps you nibble on a few dried fruits or a handful of nuts if you have them, savoring the slight sweetness that contrasts with the overall austerity. Drinking? A sip of water from a rough clay cup, clear, cold, and a bit muddy at the edges, more a necessity than a pleasure. No fancy coffee or fancy pastries, just plain sustenance, enough to keep you moving for another day of hard labor. And then there are the rituals, little routines that weave into your morning like a thread in a tapestry. Before stepping out, you might hold a small amulet or charm, perhaps a carved stone or a worn leather symbol, believing it will ward off sickness or bad luck. Some say a quick prayer, crossing yourself or muttering blessings, hoping the divine will smile on your efforts. Incense or smouldering herbs are common, their smoky aroma filling the room and warding off what they believe to be the unseen dangers lurking just beyond the door. For those who are particularly superstitious, a quick burn of sage or a sprinkle of salt might be part of the ritual, an attempt to purify the space, to keep evil spirits or disease at bay. As you prepare to leave your humble abode, you notice how your body reacts to the day's attire. Clothes made of coarse wool or rough linen, heavy and itchy, designed more for warmth and durability than comfort. Your tunic feels stiff, almost like hugging a hedgehog, and your shoes, if you're lucky enough to have them, are stiff leather, rubbing against your heels as you walk. The cold air makes your limbs stiff, and every movement reminds you that comfort is a distant concept here, your body protesting against the rough fabric and the chill that seeps through every layer. Your skin might itch from the wool, or your joints might ache from the morning stiffness. A reminder that modern clothing with its soft fabrics and stretchy fits is a luxury unknown to most. Now, as you step outside, the day begins with the sounds of life awakening, the clatter of carts, the calls of merchants hawking their wares, the distant crowing of roosters, and the murmur of voices, some friendly, others suspicious. The streets are muddy and uneven, lined with houses that lean against each other like old friends, their timber frames creaking in the breeze. The smell of bread baking from a nearby oven mingles with the scent of manure and burning firewood, creating a sensory tapestry that is both grounding and a little overwhelming. The sun rises slowly, casting long shadows across the cobblestones as the world begins its relentless march forward, one rough day after another, woven together by routines as old as time. Your idea of comfort might be a cozy blanket or a warm shower, yet here it's just a quick wipe of dirt, a splash of water, and a hope that the day's work won't be too harsh. Life is a series of small, gritty rituals, each one a testament to resilience. And as you take a breath, feeling the cool air fill your lungs, remember, this is the world you've woken into, a place where survival is a daily act, woven into the fabric of the home, the body, and the soul. You step out of your humble dwelling into the early morning haze, the air thick with a mixture of dampness and a faint tang of smoke from the nearby hearth. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, sometimes a patch of muddy earth, other times cold, uneven stone, or a dusty path that kicks up tiny clouds of dirt with each step. The sky is a dull grey, perhaps just beginning to brighten, but the chill of dawn still lingers, making your breath visible as you move. Your cloak is heavy and rough against your skin, and you carry the tools or objects that mark your role, perhaps a small pouch of herbs, a wooden staff, or a leather satchel filled with papers and small trinkets. The streets are already lively, merchants opening their stalls, children darting past with squeals of delight, farmers leading their animals to water, soldiers patrolling in their heavy armor, and the distant clang of a bell signaling the start of the day. As you walk forward, the sounds of life swirl around you, voices shouting prices, the scraping of carts over cobblestones, the laughter of children, and the occasional bark of a dog. The smells are a heady mixture: freshly baked bread, the sharp scent of vinegar, the earthy aroma of wet soil, and the smoky fumes from fires burning in hearths and forges. You are already dressed for work, your rough tunic, sturdy trousers, and well-worn boots, all designed for durability rather than comfort. Every movement you make feels like a small negotiation with the environment. Each step on the uneven ground, each breath of chilly air, a reminder of how different life is from today's polished, climate-controlled routines. Your role in this bustling scene is clear. You are a worker, a craftsman, a trader, or perhaps a laborer, someone whose job is woven into the fabric of this community. Your duty might be to tend the fields, to craft goods, to serve as a messenger, or to maintain the town's defenses. Whatever it is, your presence is an integral part of the daily rhythm. Children stare at you, half in curiosity, half in suspicion, their eyes wide and watchful. Merchants glower at you from their stalls, wary of your authority or your intentions. Soldiers give a nod of respect or a wary glare, knowing your role is crucial in their efforts to keep order. The local lord or mayor might have given you specific instructions, or perhaps you work more independently, earning your livelihood through skill and effort. Whatever your task, it's what sustains this small world, and everyone around you recognizes that. You move through the heart of the community, past the open-air market where vendors shout louder than the wind, their voices rising and falling over the din. Stalls are piled high with fresh vegetables, dried herbs, bolts of cloth, and shiny trinkets. The smell of roasted meats drifts from a nearby tavern, mixing with the scent of spilled wine and bread crusts. You navigate around puddles of mud, piles of manure, and the uneven cobblestones that seem more like a puzzle than a path. The marketplace is a chaotic symphony of sights and sounds, where the clatter of metal, the scrape of wooden carts, and the squeal of pigs compete with the calls of hawkers and the shouts of townsfolk bargaining. In one corner, a blacksmith hammers rhythmically on red-hot metal, sparks flying with each strike, each clang echoing like a heartbeat of the town's life. Nearby, a monk in simple robes arranges bundles of herbs and candles, preparing for the day's religious rituals. Soldiers stand in formation, adjusting their armor and sharpening their swords, ready for patrol or possible skirmishes. Farmers are busy leading their animals to the town's communal water source, their voices rough from calling out to their livestock. Nobles or wealthy merchants might pass by on their horses, adorned with shiny gear and fine fabrics, their eyes judging or perhaps ignoring you altogether, depending on your station or role. Your responsibilities are clear. You might be collecting taxes from merchants, ensuring the harvest is recorded, or overseeing the laborers building or repairing structures. Perhaps you are a town official, a healer, or a craftsman, each with specific duties that keep the gears of this community turning. You check a list, issue orders, or perhaps simply observe, knowing that your role is vital. The air is filled with a medley of sounds, metal on metal, the murmur of voices, the occasional shout of a child, the distant bark of a dog. The textures of your day are tangible, the roughness of your tools, the coolness of the morning air, the gritty dust in your nostrils, and the firm grip of your hand on your work. As you perform your tasks, a mixture of feelings bubbles up, sometimes a sense of purpose, sometimes a mild irritation at the routine, and occasionally a strange amusement at the absurdity of it all. You might chuckle quietly at the thought that, in another time, your daily duties could be so different, perhaps as a soldier, a trader, or even a priest. Today, your work is what keeps this entire world moving, and to many, you are an unseen but essential part of the grand machine. And yet behind every exchange, every handshake, and every official decree, there's a deeper layer of feeling, an undercurrent of anxiety, of unspoken fears about the future, or superstitions whispering that your work might be cursed or blessed by divine forces. As you walk through this lively, sometimes gritty, often chaotic environment, remember your role here is as much about tradition and obligation as it is about survival. The community depends on you, whether you're aware of it or not. Now, as you prepare to step further into the day, to face the responsibilities awaiting you, think about how these tasks, simple as they may seem, are woven into the fabric of this society. They keep the town alive, but they also carry the weight of history, superstition, and a collective hope that somehow, despite all the hardship, life will go on. Because behind every busy marketplace and every wary glance, there's a deeper fear that shapes this world, a fear that perhaps the next harvest, the next tax, or the next plague might undo everything. And to understand the people who rely on your work, you'll need to look beyond the duties and see the beliefs, superstitions, and fears that underpin it all. But for now, you carry your tools and your purpose, ready to face another day in this ancient, bustling world. You feel it everywhere. This persistent presence of fear that hangs over the town like a thick fog seeping into every corner of daily life. It's in the way people stare at you, eyes darting nervously, whispering prayers under their breath as you pass by. Their glances flicker with a mixture of hope and suspicion, as if they're trying to ward off some unseen evil just by looking away or muttering a quick invocation. The air itself seems heavy with it, an unshakable dread that clings to the stones, the wood, and the very breath you take. Churches stand as silent witnesses to this collective anxiety, their walls packed with mourners and believers, the heavy scent of incense swirling in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of wax and old stone. The bells toll softly, each chime echoing through the streets, sometimes signaling a funeral procession, sometimes calling the faithful to prayer. It's as if the world is constantly whispering, "Hey, be afraid, be prepared," and you can feel it in your bones. Everywhere you go, you see signs of this religiosity woven into the fabric of daily life. Before starting any task, you might cross yourself, fingers trembling slightly, asking for divine protection. People clutch rosaries, their beads worn smooth from years of prayer, as if these simple objects could serve as shields against the chaos of the world. In the marketplaces, vendors murmur blessings over their wares, and farmers make offerings before their first plough. Children, eyes wide, clutch their amulets tightly, whispering secret prayers as they run past you. You notice how the routine of life is punctuated by these acts, an endless cycle of asking for mercy or favor from saints, spirits, or divine powers. It's a constant dance of faith, performed with the urgency of people clinging to hope in a time of uncertainty. Today you might scroll through social media for comfort, or binge a series to distract yourself from worries. Here, people clutch rosaries as if they were life jackets in a storm, each prayer a raft against the sinking feeling that something terrible lurks just beyond sight. The superstitions are just as pervasive. Amulets are hung around necks, sewn into clothing or tucked into pockets, each believed to ward off evil. Some carry small carved figurines of saints or protective symbols, whispering incantations or humming tunes meant to chase away spirits. Herbs and strange objects are scattered in doorways or burned in hearths, smoke curling upward like a protective veil. For example, some believe that carrying a dead toad in your pocket could ward off the plague, as if the creature's stillness could absorb evil. Others thought that whipping oneself in the streets, leaving welts and scars, would earn divine mercy, a sort of painful penance for collective guilt. It's the medieval version of essential oils, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. You might chuckle at the absurdity, but in their minds these rituals hold power. The fears are not just personal, they're communal, binding everyone together in a shared, tense vigilance. The community is always on alert. The fear of the plague is woven into every conversation, every look, every hurried step. Rumors swirl like wind-blown dust. A neighbor's cough might be the first sign. A strange smell in the air could mean infection. Accusations fly swiftly. Someone is a witch, a heretic, or cursed by divine wrath. People turn on each other with suspicion, eager to identify the source of misfortune. Lynchings and mob justice are not uncommon. An angry crowd might chase a suspected witch or punish someone accused of spreading disease, whether guilty or not. The community's sense of security is fragile, constantly threatened by invisible enemies and divine punishment. You, as a healer, a priest, or a town official, are deeply entwined in these fears. People look at you with a mixture of reverence, desperation, and suspicion. They whisper your name in prayers or curses, depending on whether they see you as a savior or a potential cause of their suffering. When you pass through crowded streets, you catch the sidelong glances, some seeking reassurance, others wary of your role in their fears. You are seen as a conduit of divine will, either to cure or to condemn. Some believe that your touch or your prayers can ward off death. Others see you as a harbinger of misfortune, especially if a patient dies. You notice how the community's collective anxiety manifests, people clutching charms, carrying strange relics, performing rituals that seem bizarre to your modern mind. Some believed that carrying a dead toad in your pocket could ward off the plague, or that singing certain hymns could banish spirit. Others thought that blood sacrifices or the burning of herbs from distant lands could purify the air, though of course these were often a gamble with a higher chance of poisoning than curing. Amid the chaos, a strange humor persists, perhaps a kind of grim resilience. It's the medieval equivalent of essential oils, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. The community's fears are like the smoke from 100 chimneys, rising and swirling, filling the lungs whether you want them to or not. Every whispered prayer, every hurried crossing of oneself is part of this invisible web of protection and panic. Fear here is like the smoke from 100 chimneys. You breathe it in whether you want to or not. It seeps into your bones and your mind, shaping how you see the world and your place within it. But even in a world heavy with such fears, people still reach for one another, clinging to hope, to faith, to the fragile bonds that keep life moving. And beyond the prayers and charms, there are bonds that hold this world together, fragile, human, and surprisingly resilient. As you stand amidst the swirling fears, remember that beneath all the superstitions and rituals lies a simple truth. Despite the darkness, the community's heart beats on, sustained by their unyielding hope that somehow they will survive. And as you prepare to step into the next chapter, into the realm of relationships, family, and human connection, you realize that even in a world heavy with fear, it's these bonds that give life its true meaning. You begin to notice how, despite the constant shadow of fear and the hardships that press down on everyone, people cling to each other with a kind of quiet desperation, like vines twisting around a sturdy post, holding on for dear life. They lean on each other not just for bread or warmth, but for a kind of comfort that only another heartbeat nearby can bring. When the cold wind bites or the day's labors weigh heavily on their shoulders, it's the simple presence of another person that offers a fleeting sense of safety, an unspoken promise that they're not alone in this tumultuous world. It's in the way neighbors share a loaf of bread, passing it across the fence with a nod or a quick smile, even when suspicion and whispers threaten to turn friends into enemies. These bonds, fragile yet vital, are what keep the community from cracking under the weight of fear and uncertainty. And yet, even within this web of kinship and camaraderie, life is often a balancing act, closer than a family dinner, yet sometimes more confining than a prison. Forget Netflix family drama. Here, your cousin might literally sleep on the floor 2 feet away from you every single night, sharing a tiny, straw-stuffed bed in the same cramped hut. The household is a bustling hive of activity, children tugging at your sleeve, grandparents recounting stories of better days, uncles and aunts bustling around with chores, all bound together by obligation and love. Family is your support system, your safety net, but also your anchor, imposing rules, expectations, and perhaps a few secret resentments that simmer just beneath the surface. Every act, whether tending the fire, milking the cow, or cleaning the shared latrine, is a shared duty, a reminder that your life is intertwined with theirs, for better or worse. In this world, friendship often takes the form of small, everyday gestures, an extra sip of ale, a borrowed tool, a whispered tip on avoiding the sheriff's patrols. You see neighbors helping each other harvest the fields, patching up a roof, or exchanging bits of gossip over a steaming bowl of pottage. These moments are the threads that hold the fabric of community together, small acts of kindness that say, "I've got your back," even in times when suspicion and fear make trust a rare commodity. Sometimes you overhear hushed advice passed from one to another. Keep a bit of salt in your pocket, it wards off evil, or don't speak of the dead before sunrise. It's the kind of advice that's less about logic and more about the reassurance that somehow shared knowledge and rituals can stave off chaos. And then there are the stories of love, romances that bloom quietly amid the chaos, fleeting glances exchanged in shadowed corners of the village square, promises whispered beneath the flickering light of a candle. Perhaps you've seen a young couple stealing a moment during a festival, their hands trembling as they exchange a token or a promise of marriage. Maybe it's a secret meeting in the woods where the fiddler's tune drifts faintly through the trees, or a more daring encounter in the hayloft of the barn. Tinder swipes? Here it's a glance across a smoky tavern, and maybe the promise of a dance if the fiddle doesn't break. Love is as unpredictable as the weather, sometimes sweet and tender, other times fraught with the danger of discovery. And yet it persists like a stubborn flower pushing through the cracks of a stone wall, defying the surrounding darkness. Within this tangled web of relationships, the social hierarchy shapes every connection. The noble sitting high on his throne or in his grand hall looks down on the peasants working tirelessly in the fields, yet even he depends on their labor, their loyalty, and their whispered complaints. The clergymen, clad in robes and carrying their relics, wield spiritual authority that can elevate or condemn, depending on their mood or the signs they interpret. To some, they're revered, like the monk who blesses the grain or the healer who prays over the sick. To others, they're feared, perhaps suspected of being in league with spirits or witches. You, as the local doctor of sorts, or perhaps the town's healer, are respected by some, feared by others, never fully trusted. Your role is complex. You're a conduit of divine mercy, a bearer of hope, but also a reminder of mortality. Every prayer, every blessing, every whispered curse in the marketplace reinforces your importance and your vulnerability. Community rituals serve as the heartbeat of social life. You might witness a procession, men and women dressed in their finest, carrying candles and relics, marching through the streets during a feast day or a saint's festival. The air is thick with the smell of freshly baked bread, roasted meat, and the sweet scent of incense wafting from the churches. Music fills the air. Lutes, flutes, the rhythmic beating of drums, each note weaving a spell of unity and reverence. Children run alongside adults, their cheeks flushed from excitement, their laughter blending with the chant of prayers. You might find yourself participating in a wedding, dressed in your best, the bride in her flowing gown, the groom nervously adjusting his belt. Or standing silently at a funeral, the mourners wrapped in heavy cloaks, their voices hushed, as they carry the body to its final resting place. Every gathering, every shared meal or prayer, forges bonds that momentarily lift the burden of fear from the community's collective shoulders. But it's not all harmony. Rivalries simmer beneath the surface, ready to ignite at the slightest provocation. Disputes over land or inheritance flare into accusations of witchcraft or curses. Factions form, gossip spreads like wildfire, and accusations of heresy or infidelity can tear friendships apart. Sometimes a jealous glance or a whispered rumor is enough to turn a neighbor into an enemy, or worse, a target for suspicion. Public punishments, flogging, exile, or even burning are community events that serve as grim spectacles, half justice, half twisted entertainment. You've seen how these moments are both a warning and a reminder. In this world, trust is fragile and the line between order and chaos is razor thin. Your role in this intricate dance of social bonds is vital, yet perilous. You're the outsider, the healer, the observer, sometimes a confidant, sometimes a scapegoat. People look at you with a mixture of hope and suspicion, whispering behind your back about your knowledge, your motives, or the strange herbs you carry. They might clutch their charms more tightly when you approach, or cross themselves when they see you entering their home. You're both a part of this community and a symbol of its fears, its faith, its superstition, and its unspoken hopes. And amidst these connections, a strange humor persists, like a quiet laugh shared during a moment of quiet despair. Your awkward attempts to navigate these social waters, much like a modern office party, are nothing compared to the medieval wedding feast, where half the guests are already drunk by noon and the other half are arguing over goats or who will get the best slice of roasted pig. At least your neighbors don't accuse you of witchcraft when your Wi-Fi cuts out. Here, gossip and suspicion are the currency of social life, and a single misstep can turn allies into enemies overnight. Some strange, almost amusing facts also linger in these relationships. In certain villages, people believed that if you sneezed during a wedding, it was a good omen, unless, of course, it was the bride's grandmother who deemed it a sign of impending doom. Public punishments, like the community's version of reality TV, were both a form of justice and a twisted form of entertainment, watched with eager eyes and hushed gasps. These moments remind you that despite the brutality and suspicion, life continues, full of color, noise, and the kind of warmth that only human connection can provide. And so, even amid the fear, the suspicion, and the sometimes bizarre rituals, you see how these bonds, imperfect, fragile, yet fiercely held, are what truly keep this world turning. They are the threads of human resilience, woven through every handshake, every shared meal, every whispered secret beneath the flickering torchlight. Because in the end, it's these relationships, these bonds of kinship, friendship, and love that remind you that even in a brutal age, life's greatest strength lies in the simple act of reaching out and holding on. And as you prepare to step forward, into the next chapter of this story where food, drink, and celebration await. You understand that these social ties are the true treasures of this world, more enduring than any gold or land, more vital than any tax or debt. You wake with the faint glow of dawn filtering through a small, rough window, casting uneven patches of light across a wooden table that's seen better days, its surface scarred and stained from years of use. Today, your stomach rumbles softly, reminding you that the day's first meal is more than just sustenance. It's an act of survival, a ritual that anchors you amidst the chaos of life. As you approach, you notice the simple spread laid out before you, a bread trencher heavily crusted, its crumb dense and chewy, inviting a slow, deliberate bite. The aroma is faint but familiar, a mixture of toasted grains, a hint of sourness from the fermentation, and the comforting scent of herbs that have been steeped into the dough. Nearby, a shallow bowl holds a steaming pottage, thick, with chunks of legume and root vegetables simmered patiently over a wood fire. Its surface shimmers with a thin layer of fat, and steam rises in tendrils, carrying scents of garlic, onions, and a whisper of thyme. The flickering flame beneath the pot casts gentle shadows, as if the food itself breathes in this humble kitchen. You pick up a rough-hewn wooden spoon, its handle smooth from years of use, and stir the thick mixture, feeling the warmth seep into your palms. The table is set with a few basic utensils, most made of wood or clay, a couple of knives, spoons, and a rough cloth napkin folded nearby. The cutlery is simple, unadorned, but functional, each piece a testament to a life of practicality rather than luxury. You might dip a finger into a small bowl of salted butter or smear a bit of fresh cheese onto your bread, savoring the contrast of salty richness against the hearty, coarse crust. Your drink is a mug of weak ale, a common choice for daily nourishment, its bitter, fizzy tang washing down the bread, and vegetables with a satisfying, if unrefined, splash. Water, if you're lucky, comes from a well nearby, sometimes muddy, often tepid, and tasting of earth and mineral deposits. The menu of the everyday is humble, pottage thick with beans and turnips, crusty bread made from rye or barley, perhaps a few eggs if luck is on your side, or some smoked fish on special days. The aroma of dried herbs, sage, rosemary, a few sprigs of thyme, drift in the air, sprinkled into the pot or hung drying from beams. You notice how, in this world, the feast is a quiet affair. No elaborate tablecloths or silverware, just a shared sense that this simple meal sustains not just the body, but the spirits. The act of eating is a communal rhythm. Hands wash in a basin of cold water, sometimes using rough cloths or even the same cloths that wipe the sweat from brows. Before the meal, a brief prayer might be spoken, perhaps a blessing from the village priest, asking for good weather, healthy children, and a plentiful harvest. These words are murmured softly, almost automatically, like a song learned long ago, an acknowledgement that despite the hardships, there's a divine order keeping the world turning. Around you, the table is a stage where social hierarchies are subtly played out. The lord or mayor might sit at the head, nibbling delicately, while the farmers and craftsmen cluster nearby, sharing their modest portions. Servants or children might wait patiently for their turn, eyes bright with anticipation or a hint of impatience. Sometimes the feast is a ritual, a celebration of a season's end, a saint's day, or a successful hunt. The air fills with the sounds of murmured conversations, laughter, the clink of cups, and the faint crackle of firewood. You might hear the scrape of a spoon against a bowl, or the soft murmur of a song from a wandering minstrel. The flavors are simple but honest, earthy, salty, with occasional bursts of sweetness from dried fruits or honey, which are rare and treasured. As you chew, you're aware of the contrast, how scarcity sharpens the senses, makes each bite meaningful, each taste a reminder of the effort behind it. When the meal ends, leftovers are carefully stored, perhaps in a clay jar or a leather pouch, ready to be turned into tomorrow's breakfast or repurposed into broth. Waste is minimal. Every scrap is a small treasure, a link in the endless chain of survival. And yet this humble feast isn't just about sustenance. It's a moment, a pause in the relentless march of days, a chance to gather, to share stories, to feel human amid the hardships. The table extends beyond the simple wooden plank. It reaches into the community, into the alleys and taverns where laughter erupts over shared wine, or into the open square where a festival's music begins to swell. After the last crumb, the town breathes out. The evening's shadow lengthens, and the streets start to hum with life. Musicians tuning their instruments, children chasing each other, neighbors exchanging jokes or gossip. The night beckons with promises of music, dance, and small acts of rebellion, moments where, even in a world of austerity, joy manages to find its place. Because after all, it's not just the food that sustains you, but the warmth of the shared table, the stories told over a cup, and the knowledge that tomorrow will come, bringing new flavors, new feasts, and new reasons to gather once more around the fire. You step out from the shadowed doorway of the tavern, the air already thick with the scent of warm beer, damp straw, and the faint, sweet aroma of roasted nuts lingering from earlier festivities. The evening stretches before you, a tapestry woven with lanterns flickering like tiny stars, casting elongated shadows that dance and flicker across cobblestones, slick with a mixture of spilled ale and rain. The crowd around you moves with a measured ease, some chatting in low hums, others laughing in bursts that quickly fade into the night, all wrapped in the comforting hum of community's heartbeat. As you walk, your ears catch the faint strum of a lute or the sharp, lively notes of a flute, weaving through the murmur of voices, the clatter of mugs and the distant echo of a tambourine. Somewhere nearby, a group of children chase each other, their laughter rising and falling like the notes in a careless song, while a few elders sit on benches, exchanging stories that drift into the darkness, embroidered with humor and the weight of shared history. The street itself seems alive, a living artery pulsing with movement and sound. You pass a makeshift stage, simple, perhaps just a few planks of wood set against a wall, where a performer, dressed in patchwork garments, acts out a biblical miracle or a moral tale. The figure gesticulates wildly, voice rising in a theatrical shout or a whispered prayer, drawing a mix of chuckles and respectful hushes from the assembled crowd. The costumes are crude, sewn from remnants of cloth and painted with bright, faded colors, mirroring the vibrancy and the imperfection of the world outside the cathedral's shadow. The story unfolds, moral lessons woven into the spectacle, and you find yourself watching, caught between amusement and reverence, as the audience's eyes flicker with curiosity, skepticism, or devotion. Now the night's rhythm shifts as the calendar's sacred moments call for celebration. A festival, perhaps in honor of St. John, with its bonfires that crackle and glow, or a harvest feast where the scent of fresh bread mixes with the smoke of wood. You see the procession, candles flickering like tiny stars, carried by townsfolk dressed in their best, some in simple linen, others in more elaborate garb, all walking slowly through the streets, their voices rising in hymns and chants. The candelabra sway, casting flickering shadows on faces turned upward, caught in a moment of collective hope or reflection. The air is thick with the smell of beeswax and herbs, and the distant faint clang of bells marks the passage of time, reminding you that even in these celebrations life and death are intertwined, as fragile and fleeting as the flames glow. But beneath this warmth, a darker thread weaves itself through the fabric of festivities. You catch sight of the flagellants, those penitents marching silently, their whips cracking softly against their backs, a ritual of expiation that cuts through the merriment like a sharp knife. Their faces are blank, eyes fixed ahead, as if chasing an unseen salvation or punishment. Sometimes a sermon echoes through the night, a stern voice warning of divine wrath or moral decay, the words falling like heavy rain upon the gathered crowd, who listen with a mixture of awe and unease. Curiosity pulls some closer, fingers clutching rosaries or crosses, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. Others stand at a distance, watching quietly, knowing that the same streets that hold laughter and dance can also witness acts meant to remind them of mortality's ever-present shadow. You might see a public execution or a moral act, a reminder that the city's fabric is patched with both hope and dread, stitched together with the threads of superstition and fear. In this communal space, your role, if you are the doctor of the plague, commands a mixture of respect and caution. People glance at you with a quiet reverence, their eyes flickering with a silent question or a plea for reassurance. Someone might approach for a quick word, advice on a strange ailment or a whispered prayer for protection. You might gently touch the eaves of a roof or the edge of a doorway, touching the wood or stone as if to ward off the unseen pestilence that still haunts these streets, even in moments of joy. The community's gaze is steady, acknowledging the thin line between life's fleeting pleasures and death's quiet approach. In the midst of the laughter and music, there's a shared awareness that each celebration is fleeting, each dance a defiance of the inevitable, a reminder that everything begins and ends, just as the candle's flame flickers against the darkness. And so, beneath the glow of lanterns and the swirl of voices, the city breathes. It breathes with the rhythm of life, sometimes light, sometimes heavy, always uncertain. The sounds of a fiddle, the aroma of roasted chestnuts or baked apples, the rough caress of wool cloaks against your skin, all weave this moment into a tapestry of human resilience. You feel the pulse of the crowd, the fleeting warmth of togetherness, and the quiet whisper that amid the celebrations, the true cycle continues: birth, promise, and inevitable departure. When the last song fades into the night and the bells toll softly in the distance, you understand. All these moments, like the flicker of a candle's flame, are delicate, precious, and transient. And in this fleeting dance, you find a strange comfort, knowing that whether in joy or sorrow, the city's story keeps unfolding one act at a time. A midwife's hands, warm and steady, delicately wrap a newborn in a rough cloth, whispering a prayer softly, a lullaby against the silent fears of mortality. The tiny hands grasp instinctively, a fragile promise of survival, as the first cry echoes, a small, sharp bell announcing new beginnings. The air whispers with the scent of clean linen, the faint aroma of herbal infusions meant to ward off evil, and the quiet hope that this fresh life will flourish, despite the shadows lurking beyond the hearth. You watch with a mixture of awe and restraint, knowing that every small breath taken is a miracle, an act of resilience in a world that demands constant vigilance. Later, in the quiet of the village, promises are made, an engagement sealed with a simple ring, a handshake, and a blessing whispered at the door of a modest church. The bride's hand is placed into that of her bridegroom, the exchange of bread and salt symbolizing sustenance and loyalty, while a brief melody floats through the air, a tune sung softly by a few voices as community members gather to witness the union. The moment is humble yet profound, a thread woven into the fabric of daily life, reminding all present that even amid hardship, hope endures in bonds of shared promises. As seasons turn, work is passed from hand to hand, an artisan's tools handed down like treasures, a grinding wheel worn smooth by years of use. Grandparents' stories echo in the creaking of a wooden bench, carved with initials and years, each mark a chapter of lives lived, lessons learned, and traditions kept alive. The heirloom knife, with its handle polished from generations of grip, bears silent witness to the continuity of craft and kinship, a tangible link to the past amid the relentless march of time. Then comes the shadow, an illness, a whisper of pain, a weakening breath. You stand by a simple bed, unction and prayers murmured as the dying face the final hours. When plague or pestilence strikes, the rites are hurried. No time for elaborate ceremonies, only urgent prayers and desperate hopes. You, if you are the healer, move between the fragile bodies with a dignity born of helplessness, your touch gentle but insufficient against the silent, invisible foe. The weight of silence presses heavy, a reminder that even the strongest cannot halt the inevitable. And so the quiet bell tolls, a somber, deep sound that marks the departure. A short, solemn procession follows, candles flickering as they wind through the village streets. The earth receives the departed in a simple grave, a humble mound covered with cold, dark soil. The name is remembered in whispered prayers at dusk at the family table, in the small, shared moments that sustain memory. In times of crisis, the community may gather in collective mourning, an unspoken acknowledgement that life's brightest moments are often shadowed by the certainty of death, yet even in that darkness there is a strange peace. Throughout it all, your eyes see the sacred beauty in this unending cycle, each birth a new dawn, each union a promise, each farewell a return to the earth. These moments, fragile, fleeting, are the quiet miracles that make life worth holding on to. The stained glass windows of the church, depicting the dance of life and death, remind you of the humility and humility's grace. A time to be born and a time to die. This ancient truth, etched into the very fabric of your days, offers no judgment, only gentle acceptance. As you close your eyes, the familiar, comforting darkness beckons. The day's journey, woven with the threads of hope and loss, settles into sleep. The candle's flame flickers lower, its warmth lingering softly as the city breathes around you, its heartbeat steady, its story ongoing. You listen to the distant, muted sounds of life, an occasional chime, the faint murmur of prayers, the whisper of the wind through the thatched roofs. The world continues quietly, endlessly, a testament to resilience. Now, rest. The universe's gentle rhythm cradles you, an unspoken lullaby echoing in the silence. When you open your eyes again, the first light of dawn awaits, reminding you that in every ending there is also a new beginning. And in this perpetual dance of life and death, there is a quiet, enduring grace, an invitation to sleep peacefully, knowing that the city and you are part of something greater than the fleeting moments of mortal existence. The candles glow, dim slowly, but the warmth remains. Now it is your turn to rest.